Good afternoon, parents. So today we're going to be talking about the adolescent brain, which I'm sure you guys are pretty familiar with, considering that your adolescent has probably done some questionable things, and you wonder whether their brain is fully developed or not. And in a less joking manner, we're actually going to take a look at the brain and what happens during adolescence as far as brain development and cognitive development as well. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So to start off, we're going to look at the more biological aspect of all of this, and we're going to just more focus on the actual brain parts that are involved in this development and what is kind of happening there. So this is all taking place during and around the puberty time, when your adolescent is going through puberty, and it is more focused on the frontal and prefrontal cortexes of the brain. And when this part of the brain is not fully developed and not fully mature, and that's where poor judgment comes from, and that's why the adolescents have a hard time with making clear judgment calls, because this part of their brain hasn't fully developed, and this is where that once it does develop, that's when more clear judgment will come, and stuff like that. The thoughts and ideas and concepts developed at this period of life greatly influence one's future, and play a major role in character and personality formation. And as well, also there is an increase in gray matter, which results in an increase in flow of information, which will happen throughout their adolescence. So we're going to also talk about the formal operational, which is the last stage of Piaget's theory of cognitive development. This takes place between the ages of 12 and goes on into adulthood. Mature thoughts begin to emerge. They're thinking more clearly and more. They're moving away from that egocentric stage where they're more like me, and it's more about others. They have more deductive reasoning, deductive logic, consideration of possibilities, which is they just think more about the what ifs of what can happen and stuff like that. And then abstract thought begins to take place, and they're thinking more in depth about things, and just that curiosity is developed there. And the formation of testing of hypothesis takes place as well. Okay, so now we're gonna just focus in on what other thoughts can also take place in an adolescent's mental process. And here is a quote from an article, and it says biological changes in brain structure and connectivity in the brain interact with increased experience, knowledge, and changing social demands to produce more rapid cognitive growth. So I feel like experiences and just kind of living life also contributes to their mental development, just because they understand okay, if I do this, is it I'm not going to get the results that I want, or just attaining knowledge from just living life without necessarily it being from a classroom setting. And like I said before, they're thinking more complex. Their thoughts are more more critical, and they're learning to understand more than just oh, the apple is green, but going the science, there's the things that they're learning in school are a lot more in depth and a lot more complex. Your adolescent is also learning to have their own independent and individual and unique thoughts, and start to kind of create their own moral codes, and learning how to be their own person, which I'm sure you've noticed. And also long-term thinking and future plans begin to take place as well. Your child's thinking about, college, if you haven't already mentioned it to them. and like what they want to do, like goal setting wise, or just like what they see themselves doing as adults, and in like a potential future career with that. So just to get a better look at things, understanding like that this is the last stage of cognitive development. So after this point, your child is an adult and there's no more development that needs to take place. Each child moves at his or her own pace, and that's normal because not everyone develops at the same rate. And I'm sure you guys have heard that many times with when they were younger, because when maybe they didn't say their first words at a certain age or what have you. Each child develops at their own rate again, and that's perfectly normal. Some children may be able to use logical operations in schoolwork, but long before they can use them in their personal problems. It just depends on like what happens that triggers that logical operations, and that's also, it just comes with time. When emotional issues come up, they may cause problems with the child's ability to think in complex ways. Like anybody else, if you're stressed out, it's hard for you to think straight. And again, that's okay. The ability to consider possibilities and facts may affect decision making. This can occur in either positive or negative ways. We're just going to move on. Okay, so the different ways on how you can help your adolescent through this time of cognitive development, and just how you can encourage them and just be present and on their side about everything that's going on in their in their heads, and what's changing and all that kind of stuff. To help encourage positive and healthy cognitive growth in your adolescent, you can, as the following, encourage him or her in discussions about a variety of topics, issues, and current events. Encourage him or her to share ideas and thoughts with you, and not necessarily shooting them down. Entertaining those ideas and trying to see like where they're coming from and what their point of view is really important. Encourage him or her to think independently and develop his or her own ideas. Creativity is always a good thing, and that needs to be encouraged even after they're not playing with crayons, and they're moving on to like middle and high school, and they're not little kids anymore. But creativity is definitely key with cognitive development. Assist him or her in goals and setting goals, which is also great, because you want your adolescent to be able to see that you're agreeing, not necessarily agreeing with them, but you're supporting their goals. You're supporting their thoughts as far as what they want to see themselves doing in 2 years, or what they want next month and stuff like that. Challenging your adolescent to think about possibilities of the future, and as far as thinking about the good things and the bad things that can happen, the good and bad consequences that can take place from a decision, or their goals. How can that affect them positively and negatively? Assist him or her in reevaluating poorly made decisions. So again, like not only praising them for doing a good job and making a well thought out decision, but also having a positive mentality when it comes to those bad decisions, and how can we look back on that, and how can we move forward in a positive way, but also remembering like where we may have made a misstep, or made an error, and why was that a bad decision, and how can we not do that again. Now we have a couple questions, just to test your learning. So what part of the brain does the cognitive growth take place in? What are 2 ways to help an adolescent have a healthy cognitive growth? And what is the last stage of Piaget's theory of cognitive development? And here are my references.